dog and I'd go up to this spot, and I'd sit there and sing. So I'd say it's the singing that probably drew it out. And we were actually walking back out. The dog stopped. She always walked ahead of me, good bush dog. She stopped and turned and was tilting her head from side to side, and so I just slowly turned around. I really wish I had have turned around a little bit faster. This thing was probably 30 to 40 metres away. There's a great big boulder, and I just couldn't believe it. This great big huge thing strolling on this rock edge on a boulder. Just perfectly balanced and strolling around this rock edge. So I watched it from side on and rear view as it went behind the rock. Once it went behind the rock, I didn't hear or see another thing, and so I just presumed it squatted down. I felt it was well aware of me. In fact, I actually think it was following us. But had the dog not heard it and turned, I would never have heard it or seen a thing. So it made me wonder, how many other times has this thing seen me there? I'd been walking there for 2 years by myself with the dog. If he wasn't covered in hair, he was absolutely a gorgeous shaped guy. He was tall, but what us girls would call a desirable V shape. I know that sounds silly because it's only an animal, but it really was like a human, but it was taller and just covered in this beautiful black hair. Now, the hair wasn't so thick that I couldn't see through it and see the muscles working. But that, because you sort of think while you're looking at something like that, you think, could that be someone in a suit? And I sort of could see the muscles working in the calves as he was walking around this rock, and that was no suit. And the skin was almost black, very dark, and the hair was jet black. And so I figured, well, I think that's probably a young animal, a teenage type animal. But I wasn't scared. I didn't smell anything. So the wind was probably going the other way, so I couldn't smell anything. It had a proper neck. It wasn't hunched over, but it was like a guy that's really fit. They take on steroids, if you know what I mean. So muscled up, but not over-muscled. It was strolling, its arms moving, and it was doing this so easily, which amazed me because when I climbed the rock 2 weeks later, I clung to it. There's no way I could have strolled around it, no way. I had my feet splayed out, just sort of inching my way around the rock. And I used to do a lot of rock climbing back then. I'm too old now.
Well, how did the animal disappear, just around the rock?
It just went around behind the back of the rock, the boulder, because it was a pretty big boulder. And that was the end of it, We stood there for a minute or two longer, and I just sort of had my hand on my heart, and we kept walking thereafter. And you know how you keep glancing back, but I didn't see or hear another thing, no. Just presumed he'd squatted down behind the rock, so it was obviously aware that I was there, even though we didn't look at each other or anything like that. It was, it was bold. I really feel it knew I was there, and it wasn't scared of me in any way. And I wasn't truly scared of it, but it scared me enough not to go back for 2 weeks.
Did you talk to anybody else about what you'd seen?
I've told a few people over the years, but not many. I have no doubts that they're there now. Yowies exist. Absolutely no doubts whatsoever, because I saw it. I know what I saw, and I just think, knowing what hunters are like and so forth, I don't want anyone to hurt these creatures. This thing had no intentions of hurting me. If I decided, well, if I'm going to say anything, then I need to say it now.
So the boulder is really large, but it has some kind of a small ledge running around the edge of it.
Yeah, it had obviously been there for a long time, and the part of the rock flakes away and it creates a little ledge. And that's what this creature was walking on this this tiny ledge, and the ledge, when I checked it out 2 weeks later, was between 10 centimetres and 5 centimetres in depth. I couldn't walk it without being in fear of my life. I was clinging to the rock, face against the rock, and my feet splayed, and I was just inching along. This thing strolled it like it was walking on a road.
Its arms down, not balancing, because the way you described it.
Its arms down, swinging, like just strolling, just like we would, a quick stroll. That's how it was walking along this ledge. Its balance was unbelievable. I couldn't have done it. I don't know that any human could have. But this thing had no trouble doing that at all. And it was probably 3 foot taller than me. That's 90 centimetres taller than me, and I'm 153.
That's a very big thing. That's
right. All the reports and things that I've seen and read are about heavy set things. This wasn't heavy set. It was well built, but not heavy set. As I say, it had black skin. I could see the muscles working, and I had no doubt whatsoever that it was not someone in a suit. And it wasn't fur, it was hair, and it wasn't that thick, if you know what I mean. It was a little bit sparse.
It's interesting you mentioned skin as opposed to hair, because you're saying some parts were skin and some parts were hair.
Some parts the hair was a bit thicker than, say, further down its legs, but it wasn't fur. There's a big difference between fur and hair, and the hair was all about 10 centimetres long, jet black, and on the calves I could clearly see the muscles working.
When you say it was 10 centimetres long, are we talking smooth, kind of like a dog, or shaggy like a goat?
Not thick like dog or goat, more sparse. Just because of its physique, I thought it was a male.
Now, you mentioned you saw it from the calves up.
Yeah, the whole thing.
You saw feet as well?
Yeah.
Were the feet covered with hair as well, or not?
Yes, the feet had hair as well, but not a lot. Its skin was very dark, not brown, blackish.
Descriptions sometimes vary from ape-like to human-like.
Or human-like.
So the physique was human-like?
Yes.
Were the relationship of its arms to everything else the same as a human, or shorter, or longer?
Maybe just a little longer, but because I could see his hands, they were swinging. Maybe just a little bit longer, but fairly well proportioned. His legs were long and his arms were, looked to me, human-ish.
Was the head covered with hair as well?
Yes. Hair all down the side of the face, because I got a pretty good view of him.
You mentioned that its overall shape was a V, so are we saying that the shoulders were quite solid?
Yes.
And there was definitely a kind of tapering into the waist?
Yes, yeah, and absolutely, and fairly narrow-hipped. The legs were muscled. He was absolutely beautiful. Like, if he was shaved, you probably wouldn't think he wasn't human, if you know what I mean. But, the hair on the head was thicker than on the legs, and on the shoulders was thick. I don't think the hair on the head or the shoulders was any longer than anywhere else.
When you struggled along that ledge, but this thing was walking quite comfortably on something that narrow.
Yeah. It amazed me.
Was there actually a drop off the ledge down off the boulder?
Enough for me to hurt myself a little if I fell, not to kill myself though. Looking back, I can't even see a reason why he was walking that ledge, except to show off. The memory, I see him like a really tall man, much more muscly than a tall man.
We're talking 3 foot taller than you. We're talking like 9 feet?
When I climbed along the rock, I figured from where I saw his head, the top of his head and the top of the boulder, compared to where mine was, I felt probably somewhere between 2'6" and 3 foot. 75 centimetres and 90 centimetres taller than me, yeah. At the time, I sort of, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I was trying to think logically, okay, well, how tall is this thing? And again, I never once thought it was human. I knew it was an animal.
But it resembled a human.
Yeah.
It looked like a human covered with hair, but you never got a vibe that it was a human. You got a vibe that it was an animal.
Yeah, and it was an amazing thing to see.